the cost for sending any kind of value across the chain could be prohibitive. Like if it costs you $50 to send $20, or even if it costs you 50 to send 100, right? Why would you do that, right?
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're with us here again today. Really appreciate all the great positive feedback that we've been receiving from those that dial into our episodes. Continue to provide me with feedback in terms of content and information that you're looking to glean from this podcast. I've got another great episode here in front of us today with an excellent guest, Kirill Bensonoff. Kirill, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to diving in here on a topic that I would say, my knowledge level is relatively thin, and I would have to believe that our listening audience's knowledge is relatively thin on this topic as well. But before we dive in, I wanted to let our listening audience know a little bit more about Kirill. Kirill is the co-founder and CEO of New Silver. He is a fervent advocate for crafting and supporting groundbreaking fintech solutions with a robust background encompassing over 18 years in fintech, real estate, blockchain, and cloud computing. Kirill has successfully bootstrapped 2 high-growth tech companies to multi-million-dollar exits. Kirill, you've got quite a decorated background. I'd love for you to share a little bit more, with the listening audience in terms of what your journey has looked like, and maybe more or less what you're focused on today.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jeremy. First, I want to say that our marketing team did a nice job putting that together. I wouldn't have put in those words, but I certainly appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, I my background's in tech. I'm not a pure play real estate guy, I guess, and I've kind of learned different things through doing things myself. Started out as a engineer at IBM. That was one of my first jobs in technology, and even prior to that, I kind of dabbled in entrepreneurship, if you will. While in college, I ran a small web hosting company, and then kind of, found myself at IBM, which was really exciting and really, really an opportunity to learn a lot of different technologies, a lot of cutting edge stuff. From there, I ended up meeting my first co-founder, and we started a company, which is now called Stratus Point IT. I'm still somewhat involved in the company. It essentially provides managed IT services. So we're one of the earlier managed IT, which is managed IT just really means recurring IT support for businesses. We kind of supported the cloud services. We supported, business offices and things like that. So, we did fairly well. We're based in right outside of Boston and had clients all over the country, pretty much. And, kind of from there, I went on to, we actually had some software that we'd written for ourselves initially that we were using internally as kind of cloud services, like Amazon and others were coming of age. Our clients were asking for more and more of that stuff. So we wrote some software. Long story short, we kind of took that software, created a small startup company out of that. And then that ended up getting acquired as well as the company, the original company, Stratus Point IT now. From there, we had, this was around 2017, and blockchain was, and I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013, I want to say. I see you smiling because, when I say this, people are like, oh, he must have a ton of money at this point, but that's not the case. I only bought a few. I wish I bought more. And then actually when I ended up meeting my now wife, then girlfriend, when she saw I had these unknown things sitting in my wallet, she saw it on my screen. She was like, what the heck is that? I kind of told her the story, and she's like, "Get rid of it right away." So I ended up selling some of it and keeping some of it. So no, I don't have that many. I wish I did, but that kind of taught me, about blockchain. And we had tried with my current co-founder Alex. We had tried to we had an idea for a blockchain startup, which part of it was involved pricing assets, right? Not just necessarily real estate, but assets that could have been crypto assets. It could be other things. So we had created some data driven algorithms. We had a CTO with us he's still our CTO now. The blockchain thing didn't work out, and we ended up using this technology to start New Silver, which our thesis was that in the private lending space that we're in, fix and flip lending. I don't like the term hard money lending, but some people use that. Um, we felt that sort of the technology wasn't necessarily as modern as if you compare it to like what people do in like the consumer mortgage world, where you can go online, get approved. That's all kind of commodity now. But because I think fix and flip and that market is a little bit more customized. But nevertheless, we ended up building something that we our customers, our clients can go to our website, go through a quick 5-minute application and get an instant online approval. So that's kind of our backstory.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, and thank you for that. I too wish that I had gotten involved in cryptocurrency investing back in 2013. Although I wasn't too far behind you, I did invest in 2017, and just like you, I wish that I had purchased more than just a few. And back in those days when I was telling friends that I was investing, they all thought I was crazy, and even more crazy when I told them, yeah, I store these, digital coins on a cold wallet. Well, what on earth is a cold wallet, right? So, you'd get a lot of, inquiries in that way, shape or form. But I think a lot of that's becoming a little bit more, mainstream, certainly. And there's other, platforms out there like Coinbase and others that make it easier for, everyday consumers to get in the game, so to speak. But before I really dive into the kind of the real estate side of this, and how, you're helping support, investors, I really wanted to unpack a little bit more about the blockchain. I don't want to assume that our listening audience understands what the blockchain is in terms of the technology and how it can, really radically transform, the way that consumers and corporations do business. So would you mind maybe unpacking, just from a high level, what the blockchain is?
Absolutely. The blockchain is essentially a network of nodes or computers that talk to each other using slightly different methods for synchronizing a ledger. So it's essentially a public, or mostly it's public, right? There are some private blockchains as well, but let's focus on the public ones. Essentially, these nodes talk to each other, and any transaction, any movement of tokens or any currency that lives on this chain are written on this ledger and synchronized across a network of these computers. So that the idea is that if one of these machines goes down or a number of these goes down, the network can continue to function. There's also cryptographic methods to prevent from altering the ledger. So there's a lot. I mean, the technology's evolved a lot, but at a high level, it's essentially a wide open ledger that is should be tamper resistant and secure from bad actors, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, you brought up some words that are familiar, with myself and our listening audience, but maybe some that are not, like your tokens, your nodes, your chains, your ledger, your network. But the over encompassing kind of main, driver to blockchain technology has got to be, centered around, maybe the integrity and the security of those transactions. Am I saying that correctly?
Correct, absolutely. I mean, there's a few things that matter, right? It's the speed of these transactions. In the early days, some of these blockchains were nefariously slow, and that was a big factor that prevented people from using it. There's obviously the cost of these transactions. So when you're moving value or tokens or whatever you want to call it from one wallet to another. So let me just back up. Each person that uses the blockchain usually has a wallet, and you mentioned a cold wallet. That's like an offline wallet that's not connected to the internet. A lot of the wallets, or most of the wallets, are hot wallets, which are connected to the internet, which you can keep your currency, your tokens in, and then transact from, send, meaning send, receive, and do other transactions from. So yeah, I mean, it's speed, it's cost, and of course security, right? Because these are not these should be tamper resistant. These networks are typically made so that once you do a transaction, there really like almost no way to roll back that transaction. I mean, there are ways to do it, but it will require a major decision with the operators of the nodes. For example, Ethereum has had their hard fork, which is what this is called. Basically, when there were some issues with transactions that happened, and things needed to be rolled back, and it basically took. There was a hack. There was some issues there. It took the majority of the participants to vote and allow this transaction to be rolled back, right? And that created like the new Ethereum network. There's still the Ethereum Classic, which is like the original network that didn't want to roll back. So yeah, while it's possible to change things, it's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit more about the blockchain technology and how that technology is really changing the way in which both maybe active and passive investors are investing into real estate, or maybe even analyzing deals. I mean, help us just to unpack how that technology is really on the front end of really radically transforming the way that investors do business.
Yeah, I mean, I think the technology, it really allows a few different things to advance into the modern ages in the real estate world, right? Because as some of us may know, the real estate marketplace, I guess, on many different angles, is still very legacy, right? Like the way that things are done, the way that transactions are done in real estate is still very time consuming, very expensive. Could be difficult to do for some folks. There are so many issues across the stack, right? Because it's such a huge marketplace that's been around for so long, with processes that have been established hundreds of years ago and are continuing to this day. So it's difficult for technologies to make inroads into the different areas, but they have. And specifically, blockchain is it has been difficult because of many different things, I believe. But where I think the promise of the technology is a few different things, right? It's the transaction itself, so the buy sell transaction, which now involves, typically involves like an escrow agent, an intermediary between the buyer and the seller, right? That is there to make sure the transaction happens. It involves an expensive title insurance, right? Which is basically has very little value, I believe, to neither the buyer nor the seller, but it's required on many transactions because of the parties not being able to come to an agreement on what's actually on this title, who actually owns this piece of property, right? So I think, for example, let's just take this use case. With the blockchain technology, on Ethereum and other blockchains, there are tokens called NFTs, right? Those are not currency, if you will. Those are just tokens containing data sets, right? And that, for example, could contain any kind of data that a software developer could write into it. That, for example, NFT could potentially represent the property, right? The title to the property. So if I'm the seller, it's in my wallet here on my computer, on my phone, or somewhere else, or my cold wallet, for example. Once I'm selling the property, I receive payment, and or maybe there's some kind of a smart contract intermediary, which is just a piece of software. Let's say payment comes into the smart contract, and my NFT that represents ownership of that property is already in there. That gets sent out to the buyer automatically. So just kind of, off the top of my head, this is not the business I'm involved in, but this is one excellent use case, right? This would really eliminate the need for title insurance because it would be handled in a way that's next to impossible to manipulate. It'll eliminate the need for for all the escrow and the title reviews and all that kind of stuff, because you'll have clear understanding that if it's sitting in this wallet, it belongs to this person or entity, and there's really no question. That's just one of the use cases. I mean, there's a few others. My favorite one I think is fractionalization, which allows for I think an upgrade in crowdfunding or upgrade in investing in real estate or other assets. Doesn't really matter. Again, a piece of real estate could be broken up into 100 different shares. The buyer could buy this share in a form of the same type of an NFT, and that NFT will sit in your wallet. Thus, you are the owner of that share of that property. You can collect royalties based on whatever the agreement is with the seller. That could happen automatically. So you could open up your Ethereum wallet and you'll see your royalties in there. And it could happen like minute by minute, day by day. There's really a lot of different advantages to it because transactions are much faster. They're in a lot of cases they are cheaper. Not in every case. I mean, some of the transactions are still quite expensive, and that's a huge challenge, right? Like if a transaction like on Ethereum, sometimes if network is being utilized a lot at that particular moment, the cost for sending any kind of value across the chain could be prohibitive. Like if it costs you $50 to send $20, like, or even if it costs you 50 to send 100, right? Why would you do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
But it is like that. There are certainly chains that have been developed, whether it's on top of Ethereum called L2. So that's like the second generation of the network. Those are much less expensive to transact on. There's other networks outside of Ethereum like Polkadot and others that are very fast and very inexpensive to transact on. So definitely the technology is maturing all the time.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it sounds like we're only really scratching the surface. And if this was a baseball game, we haven't even got out of the first inning yet. So that's interesting. Thank you for sharing that with me. Now, I want to really kind of maybe talk specifically to that, passive investor. So, how can the passive investor utilize technology to find and invest in the best passive investment type opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean I just think there's so many tools out there. I'm not going to necessarily name any specific places to go, but I think there's just, and this is outside of blockchain, right? We're just talking about the web, or blockchain. Both of them. There's definitely interesting technologies out there for investing that use blockchain, but I think there's just so many excellent opportunities out there today that you could literally just start with Google, or the place I personally like to start when I'm looking now is Chat GPT. Or it doesn't have to be that one. It could be any of the AI tools that are out there. I think Microsoft has one called Copilot that's free. There's a Google one as well. So any of the major technology companies have one, and you could literally ask, what are the top passive investments in real estate that are public or non-public, meaning trading on the stock market or just private investing. It'll give you a list of whatever you ask it to give. And then you can, I think due diligence still obviously very, very much required, maybe more so than before, but at least there's many different ways that one can go, again, like depending on your preferences, right? There's just many ways you can go.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you shared with me, and I'm going to give my audience some full disclosure here. I personally have used platforms like ChatGPT as an example to come up with really deep, educated questions to ask investment sponsors before I choose to personally deploy capital, into their opportunities. In addition to that, in full disclosure, Kirill, I use ChatGPT today to come up with some educated questions to ask you.
No, that's excellent. I mean, I don't think of Chat GPT every time a problem comes up, but I should, right? As you just pointed out, I mean, it's not just about finding the website for the issuer, right? You could research really like the founders. You could ask AI what kind of questions to ask. You can ask AI to create you a graph comparing performance of publicly traded securities versus private securities in this sector, and it'll do that within a matter of seconds, right? And you could say that, hey, I thought that private investments outperform, but it doesn't look like they do, right? Just based on this very fast research.
Yeah. So outside of the couple of things that we kind of came up here related to artificial intelligence, is there any other ways in which AI, in your opinion, will impact investing in real estate going forward?
I'm sure AI will be, I would say, even more instrumental and more disruptive than blockchain potentially, right? Because it really we're just at the very scratching the surface part of the game here. I think we can run, or we can let our imaginations run wild, but at the end of the day, AI is going to make the decisions for us in terms of where to deploy capital, what assets make the most sense. I think in not too distant future, I don't think we're even talking, decades or anything like that. I think we're talking, years, few years, where we're going to see major disruption. And in not too distant future, we'll have AI talking to AI, right? We'll have an AI model representing the issuer and an AI model representing the investor or a group of investors, and they're going to converse and they're going to figure out everything about each other, and then they're going to. The AI for investors will come up with a recommendation, right? After having talked to 100 different AIs, right? And that will only take 5 minutes or something like that.
So what you just said is both mind blowing to me and also scary at the same time. So thank you for sharing that. So I'd really like to ask you just a couple more questions, kind of in closing or wrapping up here. One is, what's really on Kirill's bucket list for the next year, either personally or professionally?
Yeah, on the professional side, I mean, my company, New Silver, we're in the midst of growth, and really spending the majority of my time in all aspects of the business. I mean, I'm the CEO, so I spend a fair amount of time fundraising, on the operations side, sales side. I mean, you name it. So I'm really involved in building out the company. So we're trying to scale up the business, trying to build new technologies, and constantly learning about what's out there. As we just talked about AI, blockchain is not standing in one place either. It's always evolving. Personally, just kind of, I don't have much personal time, honestly. I have a little baby here at home, so between the work and that, I'm trying to get through every day.
Yeah, well, you're running a full time company and you're a full time dad at the same time, so
That's right. That's
that's
right.
great. Well, congratulations on your little one there. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you bet. The last kind of question I like to ask is, where would be, a couple of different places that our listening audience could maybe reach out to you to learn more about what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to share my email or my LinkedIn in your notes if you're able to do that. Otherwise, my website, newsilver.com. You can reach one of the team members. You can ask to be put in touch with me. So, but my LinkedIn profile, or happy to share my email for the folks if they want to reach out.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll put those links in the show notes. Kirill, really have appreciated you joining me today on the Freedom Point.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Freedom Point listeners, thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.